All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's actually the same evening for me, but I posted this at a different time, so looks the same, but it's not for you guys. So this is very brief. I want to go over what the answer is for the first writing assignment. First, let's read the question. Um, all right. Once upon a time, Nino Brown and Money Making Mitch were sitting in the kitchen of Nino's house, smoking marijuana and snorting cocaine. Little did they know, Snitching Snooky was on the other side of town, squealing like a pig and telling the Greensboro police that Nino and Mitch were at Nino's crib, smoking trees and hitting that nose candy. After hearing this, RoboCop, the head narcotics detective, decided to go make a drug bust at Nino's house. As RoboCop and his police team were heading to Nino's house, Rookie Cop asked RoboCop if he should get a warrant before they go on the drug bust. RoboCop looked over at Rookie Cop and said, "Hell nah, we ain't getting no warrant. I'm the police. King Kong ain't got nothing on me." As RoboCop and his band of police officers arrived in front of Nino's house without a valid search warrant, Mitch looked out of the window and saw the convoy surrounding Nino's house. Mitch looked at Nino and asked, "What should we do with all of this dope?" Nino responded by saying, "Put it in the trash can in my bedroom. They'll never find it there." Okay. After Mitch placed the narcotics in Nino's bedroom trash can, RoboCop and the police kicked down the door and ordered Nino and Mitch to put their hands up and get on the ground while they searched the house. Needless to say, RoboCop found the marijuana and cocaine in the bedroom trash can. Nino and Mitch were placed under arrest for felony possession of cocaine and marijuana. Now, they have landed themselves in court at a pretrial hearing where you are the judge. Nino and Mitch's defense attorney, Johnny Cochran, moves the court to suppress the evidence on the grounds that it was illegally obtained due to a violation of his client's Fourth Amendment rights. The district attorney, Chris Darden, argues that the defendant's rights were not violated and that the drugs and that the drugs were found in a trash can and were therefore abandoned and subject to warrantless search. You must make a tough decision here. Using what you have learned in chapters 3 and 4 of your textbook and only the facts that have been given to you on this page, please decide whether you will grant the motion to suppress, which will keep the evidence out and result in a dismissal of the case, or whether you will deny the motion and allow the evidence to stay in, which will allow the prosecutor to move forward with the case. Please make a final decision and use legal analysis and reasoning to explain your decision. Your response to this question should be at least 2 pages, double spaced, and in 12-point font. Any response not meeting these minimum requirements will result in a grade of 0 points. This assignment is worth 10 points or 10% towards your final grade. So, in answering the question, the first thing you want to do, you always first and foremost want to read the fact hypothetical at least twice. Read over it. The first time you read over it, just to get a gist of what's going on, what the question's asking for. Then the next time you read it, you're trying to pull out specific facts. So sometimes you read the first time, you may have an idea of what you want your answer to be, but then when you read it a second time, you pull out different facts, and sometimes you're like, "Oh, I was wrong. I was about to say this." But it's actually this because of this fact. So that's why you want to read it more than once. I think 3 times is the minimum that you should read a fact hypothetical, specifically for you law school guys. Now, I know some of you guys aren't interested in going to law school, so you don't care. You just want to do this, get it out the way, get a grade for boys. But some of you guys, if you want to go to law school, reading critically and also writing and being a good writer and spotting facts and issues is going to be vital to your progression in law school. Like, it's going to determine whether you stay or whether they kick you out. So it's very important. that you read carefully. That's why it's actually important for you guys. That's why when you have assignments and I give you chapters to read and you're supposed to review the chapter, reading it is important specifically because we don't have case books. We have a textbook and not a case book in this undergrad course. So you kind of spoon fed, but they do have cases in there. The important thing about reading the textbook and reading through those cases that they give to you, or port, they don't give you the whole case in our textbook. They may give you an excerpt, a certain they'll kind of bring a shortened version of some of the case in, just the important parts you need. But it's important to read that stuff because you're practicing issue spotting. So reading is important in law school, or legal reading is different than reading Jet magazine or Ebony magazine. You guys don't know about that. Y'all too young. But reading reading in legal reading is different because you're not just reading, you're reading to figure out what's going on, and then you're reading again because you want to see what is important. Why did the court reach the decision? What was their rationale? What was the issue? Sometimes, that's the first thing you want to be able to tell, spot, is what the issue is. And the issue is just what the issue in cases you read is pretty much what is the major fact that they're trying to determine. Sometimes in these cases you have or the major, not fact, major question that they're trying to determine the answer to. So sometimes cases have multiple issues. So, but you want to be able to find these issues, like why this is important. What are they trying to say here? So we have this fact, and we have this law, and we have this set of facts. What about the law as it's applied? What element of that law are we trying to figure out? Like, what's at issue here? So, in other words, what's going on? So there's this, there's this. All these questions are answered, but there's another element that's not so clear. That's what the issue is. That's how you find the issue. So same thing in hypotheticals. When you're reading these hypotheticals to answer legal questions and do legal writing assignments, you want to do the reason you want to read multiple times is you have an idea in your head, like, oh, this is about stop and frisk, or in this case, this is about a reasonable expectation of privacy, and whether or not they should have a warrant was required for RoboCop to search the house, right? So in determining that, you kind of get an idea of what the rule of law is, because okay, I gave you facts. I said they're in the house. The cops busting in the house. I even said they didn't go get a warrant. And one cop said, "Hey, go get a warrant." He was like, "Hell no, we the police. I ain't getting no warrant. Let's just go search him." Very important fact. That's a very so hopefully in your analysis portion, you put that in there. Hey, he had the opportunity to go get a warrant. It wasn't like he accidentally forgot to go get a warrant. He said, "I ain't getting no warrant. We just gonna go in there and search." So he ignored the Fourth Amendment. So you want to take that in consideration. But remember, there are exceptions to the Fourth Amendment. So I put other little tricks and things, and this isn't a hard question. I know some of you like this is hard, but it's not. I put facts out there for you. Um, but the reason you read twice is you get that body of law in your head and you read again, or you read three times, but you read the second time because now facts are going to jump out at you. You're like, oh man, I'm gonna use this to make my argument. I'm gonna use this and use that. That's what you're doing. Then the third time you're just solidifying it, of course. So how do you answer this question? The first thing I want you to do is I want you to answer the question that I asked. That's why you read all the way through, right? You read all the way through because I actually asked you to answer a specific question. That's what we call the call of the question. Um, so I said you must make a tough decision here using what you've learned in chapters 3 and chapter 4, and only the facts given to you on this page. Please decide whether you will grant the motion to suppress, which will keep the evidence out and result in a dismissal of the case, or whether you will deny the motion and allow the evidence to stay in, which will allow the prosecution to move forward with the case. So first and foremost, the answer at some point when you get to the conclusion part, or if you're going to open up with a contention, um, or if it's an issue statement, you're not open up with an answer. You just tell me what the issue is, but you're going to end by giving me an answer. But at some point in time, I want you to you're supposed to tell me what first and foremost you're going to answer the call and the question. So the call and the question is: are you going to grant this motion, or are you going to deny it? Are you going to grant it or deny it? So if you're deciding to grant the motion, which I hope you did, because guess what, that is the right answer. I want you to give me the reasoning for that. If you're going to deny the motion, same thing. Even though you would be wrong, you still be Um, Still may get some points based upon other things. And I'll show you how I grade writing assignments. So the issue in this statement, I mean, in the issue is um, whether Nino had a reasonable expectation of privacy in that trash can that was in his house. So I said trash can because remember we talked about the fact that when things are thrown away, they're abandoned. But that depends on where the things are thrown away at. Now, if the facts had been that he was trying to get rid of the dope or whatever, so he threw it in the outdoor trash can that was rolled to the corner of the street, and the officers found it. In that situation, that's abandoned. He's now put it out to the public. But a trash can in his bedroom is still within that circle of his reasonable expectation of privacy. So he does have a reasonable expectation of privacy in that trash can because it's still within his home. So you ultimately have a reasonable expectation of privacy in your home. So what that means is the cops, if there's a reasonable expectation of privacy, and um and the situation doesn't fall within some exception to the warrant rule, the warrant requirement, then what that means is they have to go get a warrant. So yeah, a good issue statement, if you did issue based writing, would have been the issue is whether Nino Brown Nino Brown and Money Making Mitch, because they're both in the house, whether they had a reasonable expectation of privacy in the drug, I mean, in the trash can that was within the home, or in other words, or you could say that their issue is whether or not the drugs as they were put in the trash can in the home were abandoned or not. So because if they're abandoned, anything you abandon, of course, at that point becomes you lose that reasonable expectation of privacy. So really, but it's the crux of that question is still, even if you voice it that way, it's still about whether or not they had a reasonable expectation of privacy in that trash can where the drugs were found. Because so of course the answer is they did because the trash can was in the house. So you're going to deny. So you start off with an issue statement or contention. So if it's a contention statement, you would have opened up by saying, "I'm going to grant the motion to suppress which will remove the evidence or suppress the evidence, which will result in a dismissal of this case against Nino and Mitch." So that's your contention statement. Then you may have a court, and you may say the rule that applies here is the Fourth Amendment, um, which whatever, and then under that you may maybe a couple filler sentences, one or two filler sentences, just to complete a paragraph. Then you move to the next paragraph, which is your rule statement. So your rule statement is essentially going to be the Fourth Amendment. You're going to tell me what the Fourth Amendment requires. Of course, it requires that the search be reasonable and be based upon a warrant based on probable cause. Then you can say the Fourth Amendment applies to anything in which a person has a reasonable expectation of privacy in, including the home, a person's their own person. You talk about what that reasonable expectation of privacy is. You can even give me a historical background of the fact that it used to be it had to be a trespatory. You had to have a trespatory interest. That means they had to actually physically impede upon you or your home for it to be a search. But they changed that and they said no. They have to get a warrant for anything they search that a person has reasonable expectation of privacy in. So that widened up a number of what they had to get a warrant for to search. They couldn't just search anything. So you can even talk about that. Give me a little, not don't take a long time, but give me a sentence or two about that, and move on. Talk more about how it's applied. That's your rule statement. When you're telling me what rule you're applying, what are you applying? Like what are we talking about here? What, and so that's gonna essentially be your rationale. But you start explaining yourself in the next paragraph, with the next section of the writing in the analysis portion. What you're doing in the analysis portion is you're now marrying the facts as I've given you. Now I know Money Making Mitch was in Paid in Full and Nino Brown was in New Jack City, but these are fictional characters on the paper as well. So they don't have anything to do with those guys. So don't talk about G Money and in the movie, or what's my man's name, Rico, do casket, casket shot every day, B. Nah, we're not talking about that. What we're talking about is on the paper. So always marry yourself to what's on the four corners of the page I give you. I give you the facts. Don't put anything else in. Um, so use those facts to explain yourself. So of course, as I said before, the fact that one cop mentioned going to get a warrant and the other cop said, hell no, we're not getting a warrant. That's vital. That's something you can throw in when you say they didn't get a warrant. For one, there is a reasonable expectation of privacy. The trash can, yes, it was a trash can, but it wasn't abandoned. Wouldn't be considered abandoned or put to the public because it was still within the house. And of course, the general rule is there's always a reasonable expectation of privacy within your house or with anywhere where there are four walls that is considered as private. So you talk about that. You mentioned that there's a reasonable why there's a reasonable expectation of privacy, and because there's a reasonable expectation of privacy in the home, and he didn't throw it away, the drugs away in a place where it would be abandoned. Therefore, the cops, RoboCop was required to get a warrant before starting the drug bust or going in on the drug bust. So therefore, because he didn't get the warrant, the evidence is thrown out. So in other words, to answer your question is, I'm going to grant the motion to suppress, which will suppress the evidence and throw the evidence out, which means that Nino and Money Making Mitch walk. Don't feel bad about that. Some people are like, these guys, drug dealers doing illegal stuff, can't let them walk. Sometimes in answering paper and answering questions, you say you have this obligation to now get the bad guy. No, the bad guy in this situation is RoboCop. The reason he's the bad guy is because he would have done, if he would have followed the law, because cops have to follow law too. If he would have followed the law, guess what? All that dope that Money Making Mitch and Nino Brown were gonna sell would be off the streets. So you have rules to follow. So the bad guy here, the guy that we throw under the bus, and the wheels of the bus go round and round in this case or in this situation, is RoboCop. As a matter of fact, Rookie Cop needs to be promoted to RoboCop's position because RoboCop's messing up. So that's the answer. So of course, in your writing, remember I told you about sections. I don't want you guys writing and blocking off saying issue in bold and then under it then under it talking about what the issue is. Rule. No. Write smooth paragraphs. You open up the statement by saying you open up the paper by saying the issue is weather. When I say weather, that's WHETHER. Weather. The issue is whether in this case, the issue is whether Nino Brown and Money Making Mitch had a reasonable expectation of privacy in the trash can in which they discarded of the drugs or the cocaine and weed. You can say whatever you want to say. That's a great issue statement. A contentious statement, on the other hand, would be what you're saying. You're pretty much giving me your answer outright instead of giving me what the issue is. So you open up by saying, as judge in this case, I'm going to grant Nino and Mitch's motion to suppress the evidence because the search conducted by RoboCop and the Greensboro police was unconstitutional. It was unconstitutional because it violated the Fourth Amendment requirement that search and seizure must be based on probable cause. I mean, must be done with a warrant based upon probable cause. So that's a good couple of sentences. So you give me your contention. I'm like, okay, start out the paper telling me what you want. You're being strong and telling me what your contention is. Then you do the same thing. Give me your rule, an analysis portion where you start to merge the facts in and tell me why these facts are important and why why the facts as given are leading you to your answer. And then you conclude by essentially give me that again. That's all it is. So that's the short and long and short of the answer to this paper. Hopefully this has been kind of a tutorial on legal writing as well. So of course we'll get back to it. Of course, if anyone has any questions or wants to, wants us, individual time, please email me. I gave you my contact information in the syllabus as well. So I can be reached. And like I said, you can make an appointment. Come see me in my office or whatever. And if you're remote and really can't get to me, you can. I have information where you can email me and I can have you call me. So I can explain these things to you. So hopefully, like I said, the answer is you will grant the motion, so the evidence goes out. So Nino and Money Making Mitch walk. That is the answer to this question. So I hope it was fun. Try to have fun, create characters, and create fun hypotheticals for you to answer. So hopefully you got some enjoyment out of answering this hypothetical question. But you guys have a good day. Take care. Bye bye.